Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Juneteenth. Hopefully, you are celebrating from someplace warm on the beach. So in today's video, trying to keep it brief today, will be about uh, white victimization and the original sin. Trying to combine those two things. Probably will do something more with it later, but let's just go into it today. So I'm just going to go first with the original sin situation, which is I feel like, especially in a lot of the global situations going on today, that, we as a society are concentrating on the now and not on the original sin, which is what I think the conflicts actually base themselves on. And just give you a couple brief examples, right? Even if you want to talk about today with Israel and Gaza and Iran, right? And we could kind of minimize the situations and talk about what's happening recently. But the original sin was that during World War One, the European powers carved up the Ottoman Empire and carved it up into basically what we see today, which is a bunch of countries that don't make sense, that have never been in peace with each other. And when they carved these things up, and we can do the similarly about how Europeans carved up Africa, because they did it in the very same way. They carved up these countries amongst themselves so that they could all be able to exploit and have access to resources. And they also made sure that the population concentrations were of large parties that hated each other. So they wanted to, in the Arab worlds, they want to put a lot of Sunnis and Shiites together so they'd never unite. In Africa, they wanted to put a lot of Muslims and Christians together so they would never unite. So their governments could never have a firm majority and be able to actually govern on the will of the people, and that they would be stuck with dealing with a lot of civil and regional unrest. And so that, yay, the European powers could be the stability and come in and not really have any opposition because the people were, sort of playing on their more ancient kind of issues. And we can fast forward that, to World War II, where, post carving up the Middle East, where Palestinians have been living in, I guess, what is modern day Israel for hundreds and thousands of years, that they just kicked them out. They kicked them out. In many instances, they stole their shit, they killed them, and then they forced them out into their neighbor's territory. Right. So what would happen if, some power just said everybody in Florida has to get out? We're putting a group of people here, and then everyone in the surrounding states just needs to absorb them. And we're not giving any help. We're not giving any aid. As a matter of fact, we're going to give Florida all the military in the world to defend against you should you want to come back and get your shit or ever want to have it back. Like, what would happen? I mean, I just feel like if we just like actually took it into modern day issues, like it would be a crazy thing, right? And you know, a lot of the issue was like, okay, it's a Zionist argument that Israel, it was ancient land that belonged to Israel, so therefore it was like theirs all along, and therefore there's some kind of authority to give that back. But like, how that's never applied in any other area of the earth, right? It's just here. And if you're not somebody that subscribes to Judaism or Christianity, where does that leave you? Right? It's like, so you have to adhere to somebody else's religious beliefs as to land that you have occupied for thousands of years. And that is the issue. The Middle East is literally up in arms still to this day because of that. Because there hasn't been a recognition, there hasn't been atonement, there hasn't been resources given, there hasn't been anything. And so for the last 70 years, it's literally been a battle. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we keep on propping it up. And but I digress. I could go so much deeper into that, but I won't. I was like, but also we can take that into what's going on today with slavery and DEI, right? You know what I'm saying? In terms of just the whole notion that they want to bypass the original sin. Like, you bypass the original sin of slavery, of Jim Crow, of separate versus equal, of segregation, of all these things. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but somehow you just want to look at now, right? And just say, well, DEI is the issue, or black people are responsible for their own things with no responsibility. And like, there's never been an account, there's never been reparations, there's never been anything to deal with this. But yet, we just want to look at now because it doesn't allow us just freedom of responsibility. And the same can be said for our illegal immigration situation. Nothing to be said about the intentional destabilization of all the countries around America, about how we've set up exploitive whatever the word is, relationships, trade relationships, destabilize them. Like, ask how many countries in North and South America have America sponsored coups for and overthrown their government and made their places unstable. So, like, we actually caused this rush, in addition to the fact that our economy has never been able to run without slave or cheap exploitive labor ever, and it will never be able to do that. You know what I'm saying? So from slavery to indentured servitude to migrant workers working for pennies on the dollar, that's what our economy needs. But somehow we want to bypass all those original sins and attack just black people, or attack the immigrants coming on, or attack the countries in the Middle East that are still unstable. But it's ignoring the original sins of what happened, and the fact that there's never any accountability, right? And then they want us to concentrate on the aftermath, right? The actions that happen after the fact, and say, oh, well, it's not fair. But it's like you're also you have to say what's really not fair, which is the original issue. If that was addressed, none of this would have happened. None of the issues that we see today, would, I won't say they won't be happening at all, but the magnitude in which they're happening would be significantly lessened. And this kind of ties into the whole victimization quote. And I feel like we can apply this both in our individual lives and in macro levels. It's like, I feel like Americans in the West and, societies that a lot of like European centers dominated have this victim mentality. It's like, there's nothing that happened that is like their fault or our faults, and we just almost try to find a way to create a victimization in us so that we can be blameless, so we cannot have responsibility or make any changes and just go ahead and do whatever we want to do. And if we can sort of apply that to a macro level and to policy, as to saying that, like, there's no accountability for us, so we can just go ahead and be cruel. One of those historical examples was like slavery, right? Bypass the fact that you're enslaving people, you're raping them, you're separating families, you're cutting off limbs, murdering, whipping, all these things. But that made the white population very scared of the slave revolt. Like, oh my God, these people are going to attack us. But instead of just saying, hey, maybe we should stop treating them like brutes, you know what I'm saying? Maybe we should follow the Constitution, maybe we should follow the Bible, maybe we should do all these things. But nope, that was a non-starter. So instead, they felt victimized by that fear and instituted even more cruelty, even more inhumane things to try and make sure that blacks could never attain anything. And that's like kind of what we do here. It's like, with even the DEI things, it's like a lot of white people are thinking they're the victims of DEI, when ignoring the original sin and then just bypassing, okay, like all the pain and anguish and disadvantage that people of color have experienced. That's just like, okay. But the solution, in any solution, and you can even go back into history and see what solutions have they ever said was okay? From Civil Rights Act, separate but equal, even gaining freedom, DEI, affirmative action. There hasn't been one movement to try and give equal rights that the majority of white people have ever been support of, ever. Right? And it's always upon us to try and figure out like what we're going to do, you know what I'm saying, like to make something that's more palpable for them. But it's never their responsibility, because it's almost like they're victimizing themselves in that situation. And when you victimize yourself, it also, what does it do? It kind of frees you to have a more visceral response. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's an even square up situation, it's like a kind of a more honorable course of discourse. But if it's like somebody, snuck attack you in the middle of the night, you're just living peacefully and they're just attacking your way of life. And if you look at Western culture, that's how they frame a lot of the arguments, right? Look at the Afrikaners in Africa. Like, they're somehow victims of equality, but yet they were the practitioners of apartheid, right? All those things. Like, you have to look at these people just saying like that. Like, look at Israel's situation. Israel feels that, like, they're looking at themselves in the individual situations that they're just victims, but they're not looking at it in a greater context, that like they are definitely also perps too, in addition to the original sin. Like, how many Palestinians have they literally killed? How many? Like, in the in the name of 1,500 Israelis that were killed, there are like 20,000 Palestinians that are killed. Is that really an equal situation? But when you feel as though you're victimized and you feel like you don't really have to have responsibility for that, you can just, your response can just be whatever it wants to be. And I just want us to really just get into this notion of like, we can't get into this victim mentality, especially when it ignores the original sin. And most of these European, you know, powers that be do that implicitly and just want you to look at the latter end, you know what I'm saying, like, and not concentrate on what has actually caused this, which is making our world less stable and less safe. So happy Juneteenth, until next time.